I have the instruments to cut someone open. I don't have the tools to save a life.
You'd be surprised what tools can save a life.
Damn.
Welcome back to Horror Month franchise. We're doing a franchise here.
So we're doing
Saw 3. Suffering. You haven't seen anything yet.
Again, spectacular packaging on this DVD that is however many years old now.
Saw 3.
Now this one, the first one didn't come with anything. Second one came with a comic book. Do you know what this third one came with, Vince? It came with a frame of film in a cardboard container, and I didn't even know. I didn't even remember this because I pulled these out to do some reviews for them, and it was sitting there, and I was like, "Oh wow, this is so cool!" I totally forgot it came with this.
Mine came with just the regular Blu-ray packaging, but it's kind of like holographic. And the other neat thing is, this is the unrated edition.
And I actually did not watch it on the old DVD. I have the brand new Blu-ray, all 7 films boxed in with each other. And if you're wondering, they are on separate discs, even though I'm missing a disc because I'm currently watching these. But yeah, this is what the inside of this thing looks like. Alright, Vince, Saw 3. This is the first Saw film I saw at the movie theaters. Because after Saw 2, I was like, alright, if they make a Saw 3, I'm going to go see it in the movies. And I did.
And once again, I did not get to see this in the movie theaters. I actually went out and just went ahead and bought the DVD, not knowing what it was going to be like, what this movie was going to be like, but knowing that I really enjoyed the first 2 films.
I still remember seeing this film, Vince. It's burned in my memory because I went to go see it, and normally when I go to a movie theater, I like to sit not like in the upper half. I usually sit in the lower half in the chair right before the space before the upper half because there's nobody behind me to make noise or whatever, and nobody likes to sit down there because they think it's too close to the screen, which it isn't. But people always sit up there on top, and that's why I sit down at the bottom because I don't like being around people, so I always sit down there. But for this film, I'm like, all right, I'm going to sit all the way up by the projection booth. And that's what I did. I was all the way up by the projection booth in this film. Very last row, against the wall.
And I don't know, Dave, we might have to offer a GPS to find out exactly where you were talking about in the theater.
I was all the way in the back, Vince, all the way against the wall, as far as I could get.
Well, that's where you ended up, but the first time around, you confused the crap out of me.
And there was 2, 18-year-olds or whatever, sitting, right in front of me. They're directly right in front of me. And before this movie started, they were goofing off and laughing and, blah, blah, blah. They were just whatever, And then about halfway through this film, they couldn't even watch the film. They were so grossed out by it. They're like, oh my God, this is so horrible. And they're closing their eyes and looking away. And I was thinking to myself, this is the greatest thing ever.
This is what makes horror films great.
I mean, they were literally turning their heads away because it was making them sick to watch. And I was like, this is what I'm talking about. This is what I'm talking about.
I can say for this film, I absolutely loved it because it was a return back to what started out in the first film.
Exactly. And I mean, this for the longest time, this was one of my favorite horror films. And I can tell you this, Vince, about this movie is if I heard a critic or anyone say anything bad about Saw 3, that was it. I would never listen to him again because I knew how great this film was. And if somebody's like, oh, Saw 3 is stupid, I would never listen to that person again. I mean, I based all my judgments on what they thought of Saw 3 because I love this movie so much.
It was a return to what happened in the first film because you had the traps. They didn't explain how they got it. They didn't explain why. And it was a mystery throughout the movie, just like the first film was. And when it comes to the final reveal, you're like, wow.
And the thing about this is it returned to a really, really great story. Not as good as the first one, really, but the story was great. And I love the fact that the main character in the film, the basic story of this film is the guy's son died. So every person he goes to save, I guess, is somebody that had something to do with his son's death. So it came to the point of, would you save this person because they were involved with your son getting killed? So it's up to this guy to save him or not. It was such a good story, and the traps in this were so inventive. They were, I think, some of the best out of all the movies. The pig one was probably one of my favorite ones.
And what was different with this one too is in the first film you had two people that was basically in a trap. The room itself was a trap. The second one you had all these different people that were going through traps that were in one big trap. This one is one person going through all these different traps.
Yeah, and then the thing is the people that one person can save these people. So the people themselves can't save themselves in this one. The guy can save them, and it was up to him if they lived or died. It wasn't up to the people themselves.
You have a killer that doesn't actually kill.
And not only do we have another spectacular performance by Tobin Bell in this film, we get Amanda in the film, and she, as I was watching this film, I was like, man, she's going to be the next horror icon, because he obviously is dying, and they need to continue the series somehow. So now they have her, and I was like, oh wow, that's really cool. Now they're going to have an actual female killer that's going to take the reins of Jigsaw, and I thought, wow, that's such a great idea. And they obviously didn't do that.
Something happens that we can't reveal, because if you have seen this film, then you know what we're talking about. If you haven't, we don't want to spoil it for you.
It ends fantastically. I mean, the ending of this movie is incredible. But it's also a downer because you're not going to get these performances anymore. At least I didn't think so. And, that's one of the only things about the film is I wish they would have at least went 3 or 4 more films with these characters before they did what they had to do.
Yeah, I kind of wish that too. At least 2 more films.
And I gotta say, the one thing that's so disturbing about this movie, besides, I'm gonna get to the brain surgery in a second, but the one thing that's most disturbing is the collar of shotgun shells. Can you imagine wearing a collar around your neck, Vince, and have like a dozen freaking shotguns pointed at your face, knowing at any point they could go off and blow your whole freaking face off? I mean, that is just, phenomenal.
Yeah, all the traps in these first 3 films, all the traps were very ingenious, I have to say, and that one was like one of the most ingenious.
Yeah, and then we got the brain surgery sequence. I mean, my God, Vince. I mean, even watching it now, it's still squeamish. I mean, you still get squeamish watching it. It's so brilliant, and so, like I was saying way back on our other review when we watched like Day of the Dead, is even though it was gross, it's an art, and it's an art form, and you're watching it and you're like, wow, that is so awesome. Even though it's bloody, disgusting, gross, it's an art form, and it's amazing how they did that.
The other thing that was great about that is most of it, for the most part, was practical.
And they hardly ever cut away in any of it.
I mean, there was very little CGI especially in these first 3 films. There was very little CGI.
Just brilliant.
Out of all the Saw sequels, this was my favorite. This one was, I think, the utmost best out of all of them.
And then when it was over, I found out why, is because James Wan wrote it with somebody else. He actually wrote the script for this film. And I was like, oh, that explains it.
Exactly. It was kind of James Wan's return to the Saw franchise.
All these years later watching this film, it's still great. And I loved it just as much as I did sitting in the back row of that movie theater by the projector disc.
This is the part where you check your GPS.
And actually, when this movie came out, they were doing a blood drive. I think it was for Halloween or something. It was their annual Saw blood drive or something. And I was such a huge fan of this film. They made a poster of Tobin Bell, and he's standing there in like a red, his red and black outfit that he wears. And he actually used his own blood for the ink for that poster. And I bought it. I instantly bought it. I have no idea where it is. It's around his house somewhere, still sealed up in the tube. I don't think I even opened it. But I bought that poster because I was such a fan of this movie.
Yeah, see, I didn't even know that. I didn't know they even did anything like that.
Yeah, I think this is classic. I think it's as good as the first one, if not better than the first one. It's probably one of my favorite Saw films ever. So this one gets gold in the ship.
So basically, all these years later, I can finally give this Saw film an actual rating. And that actual rating would be a 5 out of 5.
It's a brilliant film. It's a brilliant film from beginning to end.
But what was also great is watching these films back to back again. So I would actually suggest that. If you get a chance to buy that set that David has, or even buy them separately, watch them back to back. Because it actually, you catch a lot more. You understand a lot more than maybe you thought you did the first time.
When you saw them in the theaters, you had to wait an entire year to go see it. And then by the time you go see it, you pretty much forgot really what happened in the last film. So then you're like, okay, who are these people? What are they doing? Why are they here? But watching them this way is a lot of fun.
Anyway, point and click on that subscribe button and become a member of Box Office Maniacs.
And the Saw Club.
Saw.